Have you ever looked at a man and wondered what's really going on in his mind when he goes quiet? When he looks at you but doesn't say a word? When he seems distant, distracted, or emotionally absent, and you can feel that something is happening inside him, but he just won't let you in? Men think much more than they speak, and what they don't say often reveals more about them than what they do. Because behind that silence, there's always a story, a storm of thoughts, fears, and feelings that he's learned to hide behind a calm face. From the time he was a boy, he was told to man up, to keep things to himself, to never show weakness. And so he grew up learning how to suffer quietly, how to protect his image, how to fight invisible battles that no one ever sees. That's why when a man is quiet, it's not always because he doesn't care. Sometimes it's because he's thinking too much. He's analyzing, he's remembering, he's protecting himself. You see, the male mind doesn't express, it calculates. It doesn't confess, it observes. And that's the part most women misunderstand. Because while you try to understand him through emotion, he tries to understand you through logic. While you want to talk about what you feel, he tries to solve what he feels, alone. And that's where the disconnect begins. You crave connection through words. He guards connection through silence. You want emotional intimacy. He wants emotional safety. He's not quiet because he doesn't feel anything. He's quiet because he feels too much and doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't talk about his doubts, his fears, or the moments when he questions himself, because the moment he opens up, he feels exposed. And no man wants to feel defenseless, not even in love. Every man carries two versions of himself. The one you see, confident, calm, and in control, and the one you don't, uncertain, emotional, and afraid of being misunderstood. It's that hidden version that holds all the secrets of his behavior, the ones that even he can't always explain. He might look at you in silence, and in that very moment, he's thinking whether you're the one person he can truly trust, or whether opening up to you will cost him his peace. Because to him, emotional safety is everything. So when he's quiet, he's not ignoring you. He's testing the space between you. He's trying to feel if it's safe enough to be himself. Because the truth is, men don't talk when they don't feel safe. They observe, they read, they wait. And yet, that same silence that frustrates you might be the very thing that holds his deepest affection. When a man truly cares, his love rarely comes through words. It shows in his presence, in his consistency, in his quiet protection. He loves you by showing up, by listening, by doing, not by talking. But here's the part most women never realize. The thoughts he hides the most are not about you. They're about himself, his fears, his insecurities, his doubts about whether he's good enough for you or for anyone at all. Because every man carries a hidden question in his mind. Am I enough? He won't say it out loud, but he feels it every day. And every time he senses rejection, comparison, or disappointment in your tone or your eyes, even subtly, he retreats deeper into that silence. He starts overthinking. He questions himself. And instead of speaking, he shuts down. That's why understanding a man isn't about decoding his words. It's about listening to his silence. Because when a man is quiet, that's when he's saying the most. In that silence, he's deciding, can I trust her with my truth? Can I show her the part of me that's not strong, not confident, not composed? Will she still respect me if she sees my doubts? And if the answer to those questions feels uncertain, he'll stay silent. He'll keep pretending he's fine. He'll laugh it off. He'll change the subject. But deep down, he's thinking. He's analyzing. He's feeling. You see, the male mind is like a locked room. It's not that there's no emotion inside. It's that the door has been closed for years. And to open it, he doesn't need confrontation. He needs safety. He needs to feel that you can handle his truth, even when it's not pretty. Because for a man, vulnerability doesn't come naturally. It's a language he never learned to speak. And when he finally meets a woman who listens, not to respond, but to understand, that's when everything changes. He starts to let his guard down. He begins to talk, not because you forced him to, but because he feels safe to. And that's when you finally get to see the real man beneath the armor. But before that happens, there's a silent test he gives, one he'll never tell you about. He watches how you react to his silence. Do you get frustrated and pull away? Or do you stay calm and present, letting him come to you in his own time? Because to him, that reaction tells him everything. So if you've ever felt confused by a man's quietness, or wondered what he's really thinking when he stares off into nowhere? This video will show you what's happening behind that silence, the unspoken thoughts, the secret fears, the emotional codes that shape the male mind. Because the truth is, men do think deeply. They just don't say it out loud. Not because they don't feel, but because they've been taught that silence is strength. And today you'll finally understand what that silence really means. Let me tell you a story. It's a story that could easily be yours, or the story of almost every woman who's ever tried to truly understand a man. There was a woman named Claire. She was smart, warm, and honest. She didn't play games. She just wanted connection, real, deep connection. And then she met Adam. Adam was different. He wasn't overly expressive, but there was something in his presence that drew her in. The way he listened, the way he remembered small details, the way he looked at her, it felt like he saw through her. In the beginning, everything felt effortless. Conversations flowed. Laughter came easy. He'd text her in the mornings just to say good day, and she'd smile, feeling like she finally met someone genuine. But as time passed, something changed. Adam started to pull back. He didn't stop caring. She could feel that, but the warmth she once felt in his words began to fade. He'd go quiet for long stretches, and when she asked if something was wrong, he'd just say, "I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. And deep down, she knew it. She started to overthink. Did I say something wrong? Did I do something that pushed him away? Is he losing interest, or worse? Is there someone else? The silence felt louder than any argument could ever be. She'd replay old conversations in her mind, searching for clues, moments when he looked distant, distracted, maybe even sad. But the more she tried to understand, the more he seemed to shut down. One night she couldn't take it anymore. She looked at him and asked softly, "Why don't you just tell me what's going on in your head?" He paused for a moment, eyes fixed on the floor, and then said quietly, "Because I don't even know how to explain it." That was the truth. It wasn't that he didn't trust her, or that he didn't care. It was that he'd spent so many years keeping everything inside that he'd forgotten how to put feelings into words. Every disappointment, every rejection, every moment of being told to get over it had taught him to lock his emotions away. And now, even though he wanted to open up, he didn't know where to start. That's the unspoken reality for most men. They carry emotional weight they've never been allowed to release. They worry about losing control. They fear that once they start talking, they won't be able to stop, and that maybe if they do, they'll look weak in your eyes. So instead of sharing, they withdraw. Instead of explaining, they act distant. And instead of asking for comfort, they pretend not to need it. Claire thought she was losing him, but what she didn't see was that Adam was at war with himself. He wanted to be close, but closeness scared him. He wanted to talk, but he didn't trust his words to come out right. He wanted to love freely, but his mind kept telling him that love always comes with pain. That inner conflict is what many women mistake for emotional coldness. But it's not coldness, it's self-protection. Because every man, at some point, has learned that expressing emotions comes with consequences. That when he shows his softer side, someone uses it against him. And so, he learns to stay quiet. He learns that silence is safer, predictable, controlled. What Claire eventually discovered was that Adam's silence wasn't a lack of love. It was a symptom of fear. He feared being seen as weak. He feared being misunderstood. He feared opening up and being told his feelings were too much. So she did something different. She stopped pushing for answers. Instead, she started listening, not to his words, but to his energy, to the way he sighed after a long day, to how he looked away when something bothered him, to the pauses between his sentences, the moments when his heart wanted to speak but his mind told him not to. Little by little, that changed everything. Because when a woman listens with patience instead of pressure, a man starts to feel safe. And when he feels safe, he starts to open up. One night, as they sat in silence, he finally spoke. He told her about his fears, not of losing her, but of failing her. He admitted he didn't always know how to express himself. He said he'd been told his whole life that men aren't supposed to need anyone, and that he was still learning how to unlearn that. And for the first time, she understood. His silence wasn't rejection. It was confusion. It was emotion with no language. It was a heart that wanted to connect but didn't know how. That's the secret behind many male behaviors that seem mysterious or distant. It's not a lack of emotion. It's an overflow of it, trapped inside walls built by years of conditioning, walls that only come down when he feels truly seen. The story of Claire and Adam is not just about one couple. It's about the invisible space between men and women everywhere, the space where silence hides meaning and words often fail. It's the space where women crave expression and men crave safety. And bridging that gap takes more than love. It takes understanding. Because no matter how strong or independent a man appears, there's always a part of him that longs to be accepted, not for what he shows, but for what he hides. And when a woman learns to see beyond his silence, she discovers something powerful. A man's heart doesn't speak in words. It speaks in patterns, in actions, in quiet gestures that say, "I care," even when his lips can't. To truly understand a man, you have to step into a place most people never see, the space between his thoughts and his emotions. That's where the real man exists. Not the version he shows to the world, not the one he performs in front of others, but the quiet, unguarded version that rarely comes out. And if you could see inside that space, you'd realize something. Men aren't emotionless. They're emotional, just not expressive in the way women expect. The male brain is wired for survival. From an early age, boys are taught to equate emotion with weakness. Crying, expressing pain, even admitting fear. All of that becomes dangerous territory, because somewhere along the line he learned that being too emotional makes him less of a man. So he learns to channel those emotions into logic, into action. When something hurts him, he doesn't talk about it. He tries to fix it. When he's upset, he doesn't cry. He withdraws. When he feels insecure, he doesn't admit it. He overcompensates by acting like he's in control. This is why so many women misread a man's silence. They see it as indifference, when in reality it's defense. They see his emotional distance as a lack of love, when in fact it's love that he doesn't know how to express. Inside his mind, there are three powerful emotions constantly at war, and most women never realize it. The first is fear of failure. Every man has it. He might not show it, but it's there, quietly whispering, "Don't mess this up." He wants to be seen as capable, reliable, and strong, not just by you, but by himself. That's why criticism, even when it's small, cuts deep. Because to a man, failing in front of the woman he loves feels like losing a part of his identity. When you tell him, "You never listen," or "You don't care," he doesn't just hear words. He hears, "You're not enough." And that triggers something inside him that most men don't know how to explain. Shame. Shame makes him withdraw, not because he doesn't care, but because he feels like he's already lost your respect. And for a man, once respect is gone, he doesn't know how to rebuild it. The second emotion is the need for control. Men crave stability, not because they want to dominate, but because control equals safety. When life feels unpredictable, when emotions get too intense, he loses his sense of direction. That's why many men shut down during emotional conversations. It's not that they don't want to listen, it's that they're overwhelmed. Too many emotions at once make him feel like he's drowning, and silence becomes his lifeline. He goes quiet to protect himself, to regain a sense of balance. It's not rejection, it's self-preservation. And the third emotion, perhaps the most hidden of all, is the fear of emotional exposure. Every man, no matter how confident he seems, fears that once a woman truly sees the depths of his emotions, she won't look at him the same. He fears that his sadness, his anxiety, his softness might make him appear weak, that she might lose attraction or respect. So he hides it. He keeps the parts of himself that feel fragile, locked away, even from the person he loves most. That's why when you ask a man, "What are you thinking?" and he says, "Nothing," it's rarely true. He's thinking about everything, but he doesn't know which part is safe to say out loud. He's filtering, calculating, protecting. He's trying to make sure that whatever comes out won't cause conflict, disappointment, or judgment. You see, men don't process emotions by talking. They process by reflecting. They need time. They need silence. They need space. Not because they don't care, but because that's how their brain finds clarity. When a woman understands that, everything changes. Because she stops taking his silence personally and starts seeing it for what it is, his way of finding stability before he reconnects. And when she learns to give that space with empathy, something powerful happens. He feels trusted, he feels respected, and those two feelings, trust and respect, are the key to unlocking his emotional side. The truth is, a man doesn't fall in love when you understand his words. He falls in love when you understand his silence, when you read the small details, the way his tone changes, the way his eyes soften, the way his presence lingers even when he's not speaking. Because love for him isn't verbal, it's energetic. And when you respond to his silence not with pressure, but with presence, you create what most men crave, but rarely find: emotional safety. When a man feels emotionally safe, he starts to transform. He stops pretending. He stops performing. He starts to relax. He starts to open up, not because you asked him to, but because he wants to. He begins to share small pieces of himself, a childhood memory, a hidden insecurity, a dream he's never said out loud. And every time you receive those moments with warmth instead of judgment, he lets you in a little more. Because the more he feels seen without being criticized, the more his guard drops. And that's when you begin to meet the version of him that very few people ever see, the real man behind the mask. But this transformation takes time. You can't force it. You can't rush it. You have to meet his silence with understanding and his hesitation with patience. Because for a man, love isn't just about passion or chemistry. It's about emotional safety. He needs to feel like he can be fully himself, flawed, confused, uncertain, and still be respected. When a man feels that, he gives everything: his loyalty, his vulnerability, his heart. Because once he feels safe, he no longer hides. He no longer needs the armor. He finally lets you see the truth behind his silence. And that truth is simple. Men don't stay where they're constantly questioned. They stay where they're quietly understood. When a woman doesn't understand a man's silence, something begins to break. Not loudly, but quietly. It's not a sudden explosion. It's a slow erosion. One misunderstanding at a time. One misinterpreted silence after another. And before either of them realizes it, the emotional connection starts to fade. Because here's the truth. Every time you misread his silence as disinterest, he feels unseen. Every time you try to pull words out of him that he's not ready to give, he feels pressured. And every time you accuse him of being cold or distant, he feels like no matter what he does, it won't be enough. That's how men begin to emotionally disappear. Not because they stop caring, but because they feel that their truth isn't welcome. At first, he'll try. He'll stay present, listen, nod, and say what he thinks will calm things down. He'll avoid confrontation, hoping that keeping the peace will make things easier. But inside, he starts to detach. He stops sharing. He stops reaching out. Because to him, every attempt to be understood feels like a risk he can't take again. And once a man starts to emotionally withdraw, it's one of the hardest things to reverse. Because he doesn't leave all at once. He fades. His body stays, but his mind starts to drift. His eyes lose focus. His laughter feels forced. His words become shorter. And soon, you realize that you're talking to someone who's physically there, but emotionally miles away. What you don't see is the silent narrative running through his mind. She doesn't really understand me. No matter what I say, it's wrong. I'm tired of being misunderstood. And so he does the only thing that feels safe. He shuts down. The silence that once held peace becomes a wall. And behind that wall, he hides everything. The love, the fear, the confusion. He might still care deeply, but now he's convinced that speaking up only makes things worse. And this is where so many relationships start to die. Not because of betrayal, not because of lack of love, but because two people stopped feeling emotionally safe. Women often think, if he loved me, he'd talk. But for a man, it's the opposite. He'll only talk when he feels loved. When he feels that his words won't be used against him, that his honesty won't be turned into a weapon, that his emotions won't make you lose respect for him. When that safety disappears, love becomes silent. Not gone, just buried. And here's the most painful part. He still thinks about you. He still replays old memories, the laughter, the small moments that made him feel connected. He still checks on you quietly, in ways you don't notice. But he does it from a distance because his heart remembers what it felt like to be misunderstood. And men don't usually come back from that. Once a man associates love with emotional danger, he avoids it. Not because he stopped loving, but because he's protecting himself from the feeling of being emotionally unsafe again. This is why you'll see men end relationships without explanation. He won't fight. He won't argue. He'll just leave, emotionally first, physically later. And when you ask, why didn't you just say something? He'll say, you wouldn't have understood. And in his mind, that's true. Because to him, words have never saved him. Silence has. So he returns to what he knows. Detachment. He keeps everything inside. He focuses on work, on distractions, on anything that doesn't require emotional vulnerability. And little by little, the version of him that once opened up begins to disappear. That's why understanding the male mind isn't optional. It's urgent, because the cost of misunderstanding it is emotional distance that may never be repaired. When a man feels misunderstood long enough, he stops trying to explain. When he feels disrespected long enough, he stops fighting for the relationship. And when he feels unsafe long enough, he stops loving. Not because he wants to, but because he has to. But here's the paradox. The very silence that pushes women away is the same silence that could have brought them closer, if only it had been understood. Because when you know how to read it, when you see that his silence means reflection, not rejection, you stop fighting it. You start responding differently. Instead of demanding answers, you give presence. Instead of saying, "Why won't you talk to me?" you say, "I'm here when you're ready." And that single sentence can disarm years of emotional defense. Because deep down, every man wants one thing: to be loved without having to perform, to be accepted without having to be perfect, to feel that even in his silence he's understood. When a man feels that, everything changes. His silence stops being a wall and becomes a bridge. He starts to trust. He starts to speak. And that's when you finally begin to see who he truly is. Not the version he shows the world, but the one that only reveals itself to a woman who listens without judgment. But if you don't understand that silence, if you take it personally or use it as proof that he doesn't care, you end up pushing away the very thing you wanted to keep. And that's the tragedy of it all. Most relationships don't end because people stop loving each other. They end because they stop understanding each other. Because the silence, instead of being a moment of reflection, becomes a battlefield of assumptions. So before you react to his silence again, pause, breathe, and remember, he's not ignoring you. He's protecting himself. And maybe, just maybe, that silence isn't the end. Maybe it's the beginning of him finally learning to trust you enough to speak. At the end of the day, understanding a man is not about decoding his every word. It's about learning to hear the silence behind his words. Because a man's silence isn't emptiness. It's emotion in disguise. When he goes quiet, he's not trying to push you away. He's trying to protect something fragile inside himself, something that was never allowed to exist openly. And the moment a woman recognizes that silence not as distance, but as vulnerability, everything begins to change. You see, love isn't built through constant talking. It's built through presence, through the calm moments when no one is saying anything, but both hearts are still connected. It's built in the way you look at him when he's unsure, in the way you stay, even when his words fall short, in the way you make his silence feel like home instead of judgment. Because what most people never realize is this: every man is looking for peace, not perfection. He doesn't need someone who solves him, fixes him, or reads his mind. He needs someone who stands beside him when his mind gets loud and his voice goes quiet. And if you can be that woman, the one who doesn't rush him, doesn't demand, doesn't pressure, you'll see the real man behind the armor, the one who loves deeply but fears too much, the one who carries strength on the outside but tenderness on the inside, the one who won't say, "I'm struggling," but will show it in the way he withdraws, hoping you'll notice without him having to explain. That's why patience is power. Because when you stop trying to force communication and start offering emotional safety instead, the walls start to crumble. He begins to trust again. He begins to talk, not in paragraphs, but in small truths. And those small truths, over time, become connection. You'll start to see it in the little things. The way he lets his guard down when he's with you. The way his tone softens. The way his eyes begin to rest. Because for the first time, he doesn't have to perform. He can just be. And that's when you realize that love isn't found in how much he says, but in how safe he feels with you. Because a man's love language isn't just words or touch or gifts, it's peace. If he feels peace when he's around you, you'll never have to question how he feels. His actions will show it in ways that words never could. But here's the challenge. Peace doesn't come from him alone. It's something you build together. It's the result of two people learning to meet in the middle, where her emotion and his logic stop fighting and start understanding each other. When you give him room to process, you're not being distant, you're being wise. When you stop trying to fix everything, you give him the space to choose to come closer. Because every man opens up differently, not through force, but through freedom. And maybe that's the lesson most people miss. You don't unlock a man's heart by demanding it. You unlock it by earning his trust, by becoming the one person who doesn't make him feel small for feeling deeply, by being the calm in his storm. That's what turns silence into connection. That's what transforms confusion into closeness. That's what makes him see you not just as a woman he loves, but as a woman he can't imagine losing. Because once a man feels emotionally safe with you, his entire way of loving changes. He becomes softer, more honest, more consistent. Not because you changed him, but because you gave him the freedom to be himself. And that's what every man is really searching for, a place where he doesn't have to hide. So if you're listening right now and thinking about that one man who's gone quiet, who seems distant, who used to open up but now doesn't, don't rush to fill the silence. Just be still. Let your presence speak. Show him through patience what words can't. Because the truth is, he's not lost. He's just protecting a part of himself he's afraid to lose again. And maybe what he needs isn't another question. Maybe what he needs is understanding. Sometimes the loudest way to love a man is to listen without interrupting, to stay when it's easier to walk away, to see the boy inside the man, the one who still wants to be enough. And when you do, you'll notice something extraordinary. He'll start to mirror your calm. He'll start to reach out. He'll start to speak. Not because you forced him to, but because he feels safe enough to. That's how you break the cycle. That's how you turn silence into connection and distance into trust, by being the peace he never knew he needed. So the next time he's quiet, don't ask, "Why won't you talk to me?" Instead, ask yourself, what does his silence need from me right now? Maybe it needs patience. Maybe it needs reassurance. Maybe it just needs a soft place to land. Because when a man finds that with you, and that rare feeling of being seen, respected, and safe, he won't forget it. That's the kind of peace a man never walks away from. And if you truly want to understand the male mind, remember this final truth. Men don't love with words. They love with trust. And when you give them that, they give you everything. If you found meaning in this message, stay until the end of every video like this one, because each one helps you see deeper into the unspoken side of men, and helps you connect not through pressure, but through power, the quiet power of understanding.